Hey, this is Mr. U. In the last video, we investigated the different states of matter, and in this video, we're going to be looking at how matter changes states. Well, the basic idea of how matter changes states boils down to this equation right here. The changes of phases or states equals the change of energy in the substance. So basically, in order for matter to change its states, there must be either an addition or a removal of energy from the particles of that matter. Let's take a closer look at what that means. So let's say that I take a solid, or this solid, which is a liquid, which is not a liquid, it's a solid piece of ice, and I start adding heat into it. Maybe I'll start boiling it. The energy levels inside this molecule will start to increase as I add more heat to it. The ice molecules will start to move faster and faster. It'll start to vibrate more and more until the particles of ice are moving so fast that they will break free from their fixed positions. And at that point, the ice molecules will melt and become liquid molecules, which are water molecules. And if you continue to boil this liquid water, eventually we can increase the energy levels in the water particles until they become a gas. The thing with doing this type of process is we can actually go backwards too. Now, if you start with a gas and I was to remove energy from the particles of gas, eventually I would be able to slow down these molecules until they became a liquid. And if I was to keep going with the process of slowing down this like these molecules, I would be able to go from a liquid into a solid. So that's the basic idea of how matter changes states. So you have to add energy or remove it to go from one state to another. Now, some pure substances have, actually all pure substances have what's called a boiling point and a melting point. Let's look at water again as an example. In water, the melting point is at 0 degrees. So at this point, ice will be breaking down into water molecules. And at 100 degrees, we call that point the melting point of water. Actually, the boiling point of water. At 100 degrees, liquid molecules will be energized enough to become gas molecules. So that's just two vocabulary words that you might have to know: melting point and boiling point. So let's go a little bit more into detail about this. Now, like we talked about in the previous slides, in order for liquids to go to gases, they have to increase heat or energy. And if you want to go from a liquid to a solid, you have to release energy. So a good way I would remember this is what the particles are doing. Remember in the last video we talked about how the solid particles are just vibrating. The liquid particles are vibrating and moving a little bit, and these gas molecules are vibrating and they're moving a lot. So think of these arrows as the amount of energy that these molecules have. So if you want to go from a low energy molecule to a high energy molecule, you have to add heat. And if you want to go from a high energy molecule to a lower energy molecule, you have to remove that heat. Pretty easy, right? So let's go to the next slide. And this slide we can see that when we move from one state to another, the phase in which it moves has different names. So let's take a closer look at those names. So if I was to go from a liquid to a gas, I call that process vaporization. So going from a liquid to a gas is called vaporization. Going from a solid to a liquid is called melting. So these are just basic names that we call the process of moving from one state to another state. And they're pretty easy to remember, so if you just practice, we'll be able to remember. So I got a question for you guys. What would happen if I take a solid and I add heat to it? I'm going to pause the video and think about it, and if you come up with the answer, unpause. Alright? The answer is, if you take a solid and you add heat to it, it's going to become a liquid. So, if you take a solid and you add heat, it's going to become a liquid. So the next question is, if I take a liquid and I add heat to it, what happens? Alright, I'll pause the video and then you can take a guess. Alright, so you take a liquid and you add heat to it, it becomes a gas. Yep, most of you guys probably got that right. So let's go to the next one here. So melting is what we call when we go from a solid to a liquid. And to melt something, you have to add heat. Freezing is what we call when we go from a liquid to a solid. And to go from a liquid to a solid, we have to remove heat. Vaporization is what we call when we go from a liquid to a gas. And in order to do that, we have to add heat into this system. Condensation is going from a gas to a liquid. And to do that, we have to remove energy. Now, this one is a little bit of a special one. This one, we are going from a solid, we're skipping the water step, and we're going straight to a gas. Now, this happens in tall mountains, like I think this is the Andes, and also in liquid nitrogen, which is I think I'll be able to show you guys that in class sometime this week. So this process is called sublimation, and it basically means that we go from a solid to a gas and we skip this water phase. Alright, that's about it. I guess I'll see you guys in the next video, and see ya. Bye.